Record. Good day, everybody. My name is Glenn Stafford, the founder of Stafford Atlas AI, involving AI agents to help streamline businesses. Today, I have the pleasure of talking and presenting to you Matt Flanagan, founder of PATHe, which is spelled PATHE. The E is silent, however, it has a very big significance that I'm sure Matt will be happy to answer shortly. PATHe is a California-based technology and marketing consulting founded in 2016. They specialize in platform development, ranging from Wix sites to full-stack AWS Cloudflare solutions and other outsourced marketing consulting. Their operations are guided by principles of economic, environmental, and empowerment, which we will discuss shortly. To begin with, what I'd like to ask you, Matt, is how did this business get started, or what empowered you to start this business?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I'm very happy to be here with you today, Glenn.
Same
Thank you for
here.
having us on. Yeah, so about 10 years ago now, I'd always been obsessed with tech, been a nerd, and growing up taking apart computers and trying to put them back together and trying to learn code on my own. I always dreamed of working in tech and building our own things. And out of college, out of university, I got into commercial investments, and it was a great opportunity. Just wasn't for me. Wasn't passionate about it, and kind of on a whim, just decided to take a leap of faith and start this up. And 10 years later, we're still here, and we feel very grateful and very blessed to still be here.
Okay. Now, what are some of the most significant trends that you're observing in the digital marketing platform development space and the custom software that you're developing?
Yeah, so well, one, I'd say just sort of as a bit of context. So you're correct in that when we first started, we really did two things. We did marketing consulting and we did development. Off the bat, sort of when we were first starting, it was largely Wix sites and Squarespace and Shopify. And then as we built out our team, and I've been able to surround myself with people much better and brighter than myself, we've been able to sort of expand our development capabilities, but we've actually largely moved away from marketing. And part of that is because of the trend that we were seeing in that space. It became largely qualitative, not quantitative. There's so many different places out in the world where people are putting brands, where people are posting about it that maybe the brand isn't even aware of. And so it becomes very sort of convoluted to really holistically track a conversion, and we just felt like that wasn't going to be the space for us. So now we're in a position where we do full stack development, and we also offer AI implementation services. As far as sort of trends go, I think there's been a lot of movement around one, everything becoming a subscription, and two, AI being thrown into everything. I think those are kind of the high level sort of trends we're seeing. And what I mean by everything turning into a subscription, I guess, one of the examples, or two examples, I guess, for you would be, when Netflix first came out as a streaming platform, not when it was doing the direct consumer DVDs and that kind of stuff. The idea was, as more and more streaming platforms, became relevant or started, that you cut the cord, right? That you get rid of your traditional cable. Well, now we're in a place where every traditional, organization that was broadcasting on cable has their own streaming service. And so in a way, we've actually gotten more complicated. All of those have turned into subscriptions. Another example would be, I think a year ago, if you had a Tesla, you could buy full self-driving, the software for it was very expensive. I think it was like $8,000, but you'd own it. And now, to my knowledge, you have to pay a subscription. You have to pay, $100 a month or whatever it is. So I think that's part of the trend. Everything's becoming a subscription. There's a lot of consolidation. But then as far as AI goes, it feels like, you turn your head and there's a new AI, something being implemented somewhere. I was reading the other day about, BMW and Mercedes have their own AI in their car. You're meant to, talk to your car now. And I think that more broadly speaks to our sort of philosophy. Um, we don't just throw AI in anything. If you, I think you and I, Glenn, talked about this last week, but I think a general sort of principle you can follow, a rule you can follow is if you can take AI out of the platform and it doesn't break the platform, then AI was never really doing the work. So it was just cool. It was just hype. It wasn't actually useful. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. My hope is, and certainly our perspective is that AI should only be implemented into any given platform or software if it's truly useful, if it's truly doing the work, not just because it's cool. Um, yeah, so I think those are kind of the broad things. Hopefully that gives you some sense of what we're thinking in those spaces.
I think it's an excellent point. Along those lines, how does Path help clients navigate these trends and stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate that. Gosh, I would say I'm trying to sort of, simplify things down to sort of these generalist talking points. Something that we say to our clients a lot is we'll tell you when you don't need AI, so you can trust us when we tell you you do. And what we mean by that is that we're not going to just tell you to throw AI at every solution, to have Claude do this or Cowork do that or GPT do this or Gemini that. We're only going to suggest that you use those things if they're truly useful. We're focused on optimization and efficiency. So as we're helping any given client navigate these, really what we're doing is trying to see the forest through the trees. So we're stepping back and saying, what aspects of this workflow, this specific workflow or this specific platform could we automate reliably without, the need for human intervention, and sort of looking at things that way, and then also categorizing things by saying, hey, client X, we can automate this workflow, but you'll want human intervention here. So our goal also is not that we want to replace people. Generally, speaking for myself, I don't believe that AI is replacing people, at least not in useful ways. I can't speak for companies like Meta that are doing these massive layoffs and sort of blaming it on AI. I think it was largely just because of mismanagement and overspending. But yeah, we generally try and just help our clients optimize where they are and encourage them that AI in its current state isn't replacing people. People that understand how to leverage AI within the context of their workflow to optimize their efficiency and output, they're going to replace a team of people because they're going to increase the capability of their output. They're going to expand the capability of their output. So generally, we also just take things case by case. It depends on the client. It depends on what they're doing. And in any instance, for example, with some of the clients we work with that are very customer facing, right? They have a lot of touch points with their clients or their customers. They have a lot of human interactions with them. We generally try really, really to, or excuse me, we generally try to encourage people to really, really lean into that. As more and more businesses are automating things, if you were mentioning, Glenn, before we started the podcast here, that you had an issue with your headset, right? Probably 5 years ago, you could pick up the phone and call somebody. Now, I'm sure if you tried to get support on that, it's going to be some automated AI agent that you're shouting at and pressing zero 100 times, right? To try and get through to an actual human. So we really, in this age of AI and I think AI hype, we've really tried to encourage our clients and our partners to focus on the human element. And again, only use AI when it's truly useful, but create more human touch points. And that actually is going to differentiate you from all these other companies that are throwing AI at everything just to see if it sticks.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly because it comes up to two things. Uh, Red Hat support went down the tubes when IBM bought them. And one of the
Yeah,
things, if you've ever dealt with them, it drives me up a wall because everything's done through an email. Where if
yeah,
I'm on a 15-minute conversation, I'll be done, as opposed to emails flying back and forth for a period of 4 weeks. And
yeah,
then, interesting aspect, because now with getting my pharmacy drugs, they're using an AI agent to take phone calls.
yeah,
What's your issue? I want to talk to a person. I'm sorry, we can't help you right now. I'm like,
yeah,
whatever you're paying for that stinks if you can't. I mean, too many of these call agents right now are not properly designed to hit the full gamut, and
yeah.
that's a bloody shame.
Yeah, and I would just one more, not to interrupt you here, Glenn,
No
but one
worries.
more thing I would add on that, sort of a broader human look at the state of things right now. I was talking to some of the young folks at the university I graduated from. They're trying to start a business. It's a really cool idea. They're essentially trying to start a water bottle business, and they use aluminum water bottles, and there's a altruistic aspect to it. And they were asking me, what do you think is different now? What do you think is different about the world now? And obviously, I'm, nearly 35 years old. I don't have a whole heap of context, but I have the context I have. I was, raised just before smartphones, before the internet, or, when the internet was sort of just coming online. And, was able to grow up through big parts of my education without having social media. I can't imagine what it's like for kids today. But what I say to these kids is, I think we live in an age now where the hard things are easy and the easy things are hard. And what I mean by that is 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I think 30 years ago, Glenn, you said you were working, I think it was a contract with the government around that time,
Yes.
right? At that time, to your point, right, it was the point that, excuse me, you shared with me before, it was really hard to stand up a server quickly. It was really hard to do that. There weren't many people that could do it. Now, with Lovable or with Claude, I can stand up a server on AWS or Supabase without any real technical knowledge in 15 minutes. But back then, you were having human interactions all the time. Maybe you picked up your landline to talk to somebody, but you would usually have most of your confrontations and interactions face to face. Whereas now, a lot of these younger folks are their interactions are sort of hidden behind a screen. And so I think the genuine human connection, that's gotten harder. But
Yes.
these incredible technical feats have gotten a lot easier. And so I think that's kind of the broad human perspective that I have on all of this right now.
Oh, there's significant truth to that. The only issue I have is and you can understand where I'm coming from, is these
Sure.
commercial off-the-shelf products where I can have someone go ahead and configure the machine automatically. However, the service won't come
Yeah.
up because they lack the fundamentals of systems
Yeah.
administration. I at least
Yeah.
I at least have the depth because I lost count after 2000 of the number of machines that I've installed over the years.
Oh,
And,
I bet it's astronomical. Yeah.
it is astronomical. And basically, one of the things that I used to do is I used to have scripts to go ahead and do the installation to make it better, more streamlined. I was probably
Hmm.
one of the few people doing that back then because, I mean, I was taught very early on in life, anything you do more than once gets scripted. And that's what I
Yeah.
basically did. Uh,
Yeah.
Along those lines with the navigation, what do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges for your business in this niche that you have for the next 3 years?
I think AI implementation is probably going to be our growth engine, and we'll aim to keep a small portfolio of our own products. And generally, we're making the bet that firms who can be both, or in our case, studios that can both advise on AI and actually build it and build tools with it, those are the ones that are going to win. And that's kind of the moat that we're trying to carve out. And I think what we've learned over the, decade, roughly decade or decade plus of enterprise development that we've been doing is that this market is going to continue to consolidate, and that's a dangerous thing for a lot of small agencies because you're heavily, excuse me, reliant on your client mix. And so the way that we sort of see the future and the way that we think we can sort of combat that is by continuing to offer our support and help in building. If it's digital, we can build it for enterprise clients and other folks and offering AI implementation. But then, as I said, building our own things. And that's kind of the focus that we have right now. And as far as helping our existing and any future clients navigate this, I think, again, it's taking that hyper personalized approach. I hope that I don't have to, put my foot in my own mouth here in the coming years. But my belief is one of the things that's going to continue to differentiate us is when you work with PATHe, you'll work with people. We're definitely going to use AI to leverage, and we're going to use AI to drive down cost as much as we can so it can be a more equitable partnership, or rather just an equitable partnership in general. but there's always going to be a personal touch. You'll be able to get one of us on the phone no matter when it is. And I do see that as the moat that will continue to be able to operate in moving forward. If that answers your question, I may have gone
No,
slightly
I
off the
believe, I
rails
believe,
there.
no, I think it is a legitimate response to that. Now, one of the things that I'd like to know is where's your business right now?
Okay. Right now, well, geographically, although I know you're not asking that, we're in California. Um, our big focus right now, as far as where we are, is to take the deep custom enterprise engineering knowledge that we've gained and turn that into repeatable productized work. So I think very much sort of piggybacking on what you just said, Glenn, about your time 30 years ago. If you repeat it, you script it. And we're very much trying to focus on that as a business right now. And we're trying to, again, focus on what are the things that we've built for ourselves that we found to be incredibly useful, and we built out a necessity because there was no good solution for us, that we can productize and that we can convert into a SaaS platform, and that we can offer to any other businesses like us or individuals like us that might find it useful. And right now our focus on that is with EVID. You and I talked about that I think last week, which is our compliance automation and trust management. So think your SOC 2s, your GDPR, your ISO, the sort of the example as far as competitors go for a reference point would be a Drata or a Vanta or a Secure Frame. There's also smaller companies like Clay. But when we were stepping back, rather, again, for the last 10 years, we've been doing a lot of enterprise work. We're a small company. For most of the time that we've existed, we've been 10 people or less. We're a small company. To win enterprise contracts, to even get the opportunity to bid for an enterprise contract, because I know our team is competent, I know our team is capable, and I know they're agile. So I know we're right for those jobs. But to even get an opportunity to bid on those projects, we have to have, for example, SOC 2 Type 2 compliance certificate that is up to date on a year by year basis, and a number of other ones, including HIPAA, based on some of the enterprise white label work that we did during COVID for a company that was building respirators. We had to be HIPAA compliant. And so what we found over the last 5 to 6 years is I personally was spending about 300, without exaggeration, I promise you this is the real numbers, about 300 hours a year just gathering evidence, or rather, excuse me, collecting evidence and creating policy documents and making sure that we're actually following those, and making sure that everyone on our team and every platform and every vendor that we use is following those. And then going to, I won't name the specific one, but of the competitors that I mentioned, going to one of those platforms, and we were spending over $20,000, in some cases up to $60,000 a year, just to get these compliance certificates, just to have the opportunity to bid, not even a guarantee of winning them. And we looked at that and said, this is not equitable at all. Nobody, one, it's an incredibly convoluted process. It's a very technical thing. And the reality is most people don't, really understand it and won't need to most of the time. So we over a period of time started to build our own solution that we were using to collect evidence, to generate documents, and to pass to CPAs. And what we realized through all that was, wow, we have something here. We have something here that we believe and have started to now get feedback is better than anything else out there right now. It automates more, it's more consistent, it's more reliable. The AI is fundamentally a part of it. If you took AI out of EVID, it would break. And we realized that because we built this in the way that we build every other enterprise project, which is agile with a really small team, we didn't have to go raise money. Whereas the competition, I think collectively has raised almost $500 million just in like the last 4 years. You've got to set your price at $20,000 or $30,000 to make, to be able to pay your investors back. We haven't had to do that. So we're able to offer a platform to help the small guy, the little business, the agency, the studio, get compliant in whatever framework they need to have the opportunity to win that project. And we're able to do it for about a third of the cost and about a third or less of the time. And
So if
that's really the focus right now for us.
I'm understanding correct, we're talking about EVID, and
Yeah.
EVID now has the wherewithal through its AI capabilities to be able to address these compliance issues based
Yeah.
upon the rules that's been provided to them.
Yeah, exactly. And so two things on that. One of the differentiating factors with us and with EVID, and I know it's a weird name. It's actually EVIDR. It's the Latin derivative for evidence. Trust me, we had all of the arm wrestling battles on what to name it because obviously we were concerned people wouldn't understand it, people wouldn't know what it meant. But after some testing, we realized that it actually worked in our favor because people would just call, they would pronounce it all kind of different ways, and it kind of became a talking point. We may have to review that again in the future, but circling back to what you asked me earlier about trends about AI, specifically with Evid, we learned through the process of building it, just like we learned that this platform is going to be useful to many other small businesses and agencies, or rather, just like us. We learned how to do AI implementation incredibly effectively because that's ultimately what we were doing. We were taking a concept that we knew we needed, and we were implementing AI in a useful way that really does take you through the entire process. I think we were looking at this as a team earlier today, and the way that we've got our AI in EVID, we call it SAM, it will consistently get you through about 80% of all the work that you need to do. In some cases, it'll be higher, in some cases, a little bit lower. But on average, that 300 number, 80% of that's handled by the AI. So instead of it taking 90 days, it's going to take you, 1 to 2 weeks. And so we've learned a lot about that. And that's part of what we're also, as I talked about, those sort of two things. When you ask where PATHe is today, we're focused on helping businesses implement AI in truly useful ways. And we're focused on the products that we're building and getting those out into the market so other businesses can leverage them. And we really learned a lot about AI implementation through this process in a way that we believe is only going to help us more and more in adding value to our partners and future customers and clients. That was a very wordy response to a simple answer, Glenn. I
Well,
apologize. I
no,
get excited.
well, your passion just comes out, and I think it is great for people to get a very good perspective from the angles you're coming from. Do the names Ross Overbeek and Larry Wozniak mean anything to you?
Larry sounds they both sound familiar, but I'd be lying if I told you I can recall off the top of my head who they are.
Okay, Ross Overbeek was artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Larry Wozniak was artificial reasoning. And I actually had them as scheduled speakers for uniform presentations. And what I found very fascinating is Larry Wozniak said the problem with AI is it's this or that. We in
Yeah.
artificial reasoning are overlaying artificial intelligence with the reasoning to
So like a
better
machine
prepare
learning layer as like
machine learning
reinforcement
machine.
learning.
Yes, and the reason why I'm asking that is artificial intelligence talks about the relearning capability. So by
Hmm.
definition, would you, based upon Larry's definition, consider AI actually artificial reasoning based upon Larry's claims?
It's a good question. I think it depends on how you look at it. So, for example, if you're using Claude today and you ask it, let's say, build me an application that is going to manage my home inventory, right? And remind me of all the things that I do frequently, change the house filter, change the fridge filters, order cleaning supplies, all that. If you do that, you'll see it thinking, and you can click on that and see exactly how it's thinking. And it is reasoning. It's fighting back and forth. So that I think his definition is accurate. However, if you look at it from the sort of take the physics approach, right? Look at how it works fundamentally at its core. AI as we know it today is LLMs invented by Google, right? And I think Google, or maybe Google invented transformers. I can't remember, but it's just it's just language prediction. That's all it is. They're guessing what is the most likely word that is going to come next in this. And now that we've made it multimodal, it's essentially doing that same thing, but through vision and through voice as well. But it really is a predictive model that it's just based on your corpus of data, right? So if you gave an AI model all the information in the world about every business class action lawsuit that's ever happened, and that was your AI model, and then you went to it and said, "Write me a poem," it would probably write you a really terrible poem, right? Because it doesn't have that's not part of its corpus of knowledge. And I think where Larry is correct, and I think where you're pointing us right now is to say, yes, that is how an LLM works. But by adding this layer of reasoning or machine learning that is reinforcement on top of it, you really expand the capability of what it's able to do. And so I think my simple answer to that would be, do I think Larry's definition is correct? Yes and no.
Okay, well, you gave a complete answer with the pros and cons. Thank you very much on that. Where's your
Yeah.
business right now?
Yeah, so we were talking about that a little bit earlier in terms of, we are in a position where we are focused on two things. How do we help businesses navigate this new world of AI in a way that's actually useful, right? I think a lot of what we see today is AI that demos well, not that's useful. One of the funniest examples would be, and this is both AI and software more broadly, if you watched the Meta announcement about the Ray-Ban displays, right? Not the ones with just the cameras, but the one with a little single display on the, I think it's the right eye. The demo didn't work. It broke most of the time. And that's not to say that software doesn't break sometimes, it does. But that was a great example of AI implementation that demos well, although it didn't work in the demo, but isn't actually useful. Doesn't actually do anything that I can't do just by looking at my watch or my phone, right? So we're focused on how do we help our clients, customers, and partners implement AI into their business in truly useful ways, not to get rid of people, but to optimize the human output. That's one. Two is we're focused on building our own platforms. We're focused on building platforms that solve real problems for us. And we believe that those will then in turn solve problems for others. Are we using AI and implementing AI in our own platforms? Absolutely. But as Glenn, you and I talked about at the beginning of this conversation, our approach is if we can take AI out of that platform we just built, it doesn't break it, then again, the AI was never useful and it wasn't needed. If you took AI out of any of these platforms that we've built and are launching right now, and the ones that'll be coming, in the coming years, they'll break because it's fundamentally useful. It's fundamentally doing the work. So in simple terms, that's where we are today.
And with regards to that, what are the obstacles that you're dealing with these days?
Oof, Glenn, my man, how much time you got? I would say it's if I had to sort of distill it down, one of the obstacles, which I think pretty much any tech company today is dealing with, is usage. It's the cost of tokens. It's usage limits. It's for example, we got to use Anthropic's Fable 5 model. I think it came out on like the 12th of June. And then, less than 72 hours later, the government issued this mandate pulling it down. That's a whole nother can of worms to jump into. When we have this process that I would encourage any of your listeners to try too, anytime a new model comes out, we call it prompt to production. And I'm sure there are many other people that do something similar. To test how good a model is, we have a standard application prompt that we'll reuse. So when Opus 4.7 came out, 4.8, when Fable 5 came out, we give it this and we tell it, hey, we're not going to intervene at all. Here's your one prompt, get this thing all the way to production. And in most cases, it's cool and it's kind of impressive. But with Fable 5, we were blown away. It was an incredible leap forward. And so when you ask what are some of the obstacles we're facing outside of usage limits and the cost of tokens, there's also this geopolitical aspect of, can the government at any point force these companies to pull down a model that is, so imagine, Glenn, if we had for one of our clients, BMW, if we had built an enterprise tool for them that, let's just say, handles safety systems in a car, and it's doing it intelligently, and it's got multimodal capabilities using the cameras, the sensors, all this stuff, and that AI model is running on the API for Fable 5. If the government issues a mandate forcing Anthropic to pull that down, what happens to all that software? Sure, we can revert it to a different one, but fundamentally, it's not going to work the same. So there's a real risk there too. I think the third and biggest maybe hurdle that we're running into, Glenn, is there's so much noise. There's so much noise right now. So, for example, with Evid, we believe, and I believe in my bones, that we really have built the absolute best product for this need, for this use case. But if nobody ever knows about it, hears about it, or uses, gets a chance to use it, it doesn't matter. And so we really find ourselves, as far as hurdles, that is our biggest hurdle. We have great ideas, just like so many other businesses. We're really good at execution. We're really good at understanding this balance between equal parts beautiful and useful, keeping things intuitive, understanding that perfection is not when you have nothing left to add, but when you have nothing left to take away. We're good at that stuff. We're really, really good at it. But if nobody ever hears about it, it doesn't matter. And so, with regard to sort of the sub point to that bullet, is what we found recently, and I'd actually be interested to hear, Glenn, what your perspective is on this. We don't need to, whereas a lot of our competition and other agencies and studios and development companies often need to raise money to be able to build the platform. We don't need to raise money to build a platform. We're capable and competent to do that. We're finding that actually we may need to and have started discussions with a number of angel investors and VC firms to raise money just to be able to go to market, because the organic things that worked back in the day don't work now. I mean, I'm sure you probably remember, Glenn. I don't know what the demographic of your users is, but Glenn, do you remember when Google Ads first came out? I don't know what
Yes.
that was, maybe 15 years ago. You could put $100 behind a Google ad and it was gonna work. I think Tim Ferriss has a whole section in his book, The 4 Hour Work Week, where he talked about that was kind of the secret sauce at the time. You just run a Google ad and it works. Nowadays, it doesn't really. And same thing with Facebook and Instagram. And so what we're sort of realizing is, the old adage of, in order to get people where you want them to be, first you have to meet them where they are. It's really hard to meet people where they are because there's a million other companies and influencers and people shouting at them, let alone showing them, for whatever reason, what they ate for dinner last night. So those are probably our three biggest hurdles. To summarize them, it's tokens and the cost of tokens and usage limits. It's this odd sort of geopolitical atmosphere that we live in right now, or time that we live in right now. And then it's just generally cutting through the noise and getting people to actually see and get their hands on these things that we built.
Well, with
I'd
Evid
be interested
ID,
though if you've seen that too.
well, I haven't, since I dealt primarily a lot with just building scripts to do automated tasks. I have
Okay.
been involved with that, but I have heard it. And the thing that I think gets to be very distracting is when people start putting restrictions out there. I mean, why is
Yeah.
there the restrictions? Because I wish people would use level heads. I mean, I'll go back one of the things, Cisco router. Cisco was big on NetBEUI. NetBEUI was going to
Yes.
replace the internet.
Yep.
And what I got a big kick out of was, no, I'm sorry, maybe it was, no, Cisco router was the one that put the plug on this. Somebody was big on NetBEUI, and that's going to replace TCP/IP. And basically, Cisco router basically told the individual with NetBEUI, says, "What makes you think we're going to support it?" So when you have
Mm.
Cisco routers dominating the market, okay, you have a situation where if they're not going to support you, you're not going to have a very large client base. The
Yeah.
one thing that was kind of interesting is when it comes to TCP/IP, this is a absurd abstraction, but TCP/IP could include smoke screens or
Sure.
smoke signals. Okay, you just need something to interpret it, and it was amazing the number of ignorant people where, oh, I can't uh, run, uh, I can't interconnect um, internet on a token ring. Yes, you can.
Right.
It knows how to
Right.
interpret it, vice versa. I mean, I'm just glad we got rid of the coaxial cables. That was a pain in the neck. You
Yeah,
get
coax cables are.
yeah. If you have a crimp in it, you're screwed. And trying to
Yep.
rewire it was even more of a pain in the neck. Thank God for coaxial. I mean, the Code 5 cables that we now use to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'd be kind of interested in is uh, highlight some of your professional wins and perhaps maybe talk about your professional wins with your customers with EVID.
Yeah. Well, I think to talk about the wins, I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the failures because I do think um, even just when I was first coming up, again, I'm going to be 35 here soon, and I don't know, maybe it still is the same, and maybe I'm just jaded, but I felt like when I was in college and when I was sort of first starting to cut my teeth on things, failure was not only acceptable, it was sort of encouraged, and I have had this sense lately that people are sort of more scared and feel more shame around failure. But I do think failure is where we learn the most.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So and we've had some truly epic failures, and maybe I'll just touch on a couple of those really quick, and then I'll highlight just a couple of our wins. But when I first started the company, we I was Glenn, it was a struggle. I did such a bad job at planning. I had no runway. I kind of just assumed I was good at this. People were interested in paying me for it. We'll make a bunch of money and we'll be fine. But I I did not have a runway. So what that translated to is in the evenings I was driving Uber. I was renting out my room in the condo where myself and at the time my business partner lived together on Airbnb. And I was also going back to my roots. I played soccer all the way through college, albeit if anyone listening this knows my sister, she's the real talent in the family. She's incredible. But yeah, I mean we struggled. We struggled and got it totally wrong. And and then we saw things start to pick up and get better. And again, I just out of ignorance, I think not a whole lot of great experience at that time. I hired a bunch of people, but then we went through a lull where our project pipeline died off. There were no new projects, and I had to fire an entire team of people at 24 years old, 25 years old. And I mean, I was wrecked by that for months and just felt like I can't do this anymore. I'm just not right for this. I'm not capable of doing this. And I think that led me to one of my first real big wins. And it's more qualitative than quantitative, but I think perhaps the best and most important thing that I've done in my career is proactively seek out older, wiser people to guide me and to mentor me. And so in many ways, I feel that I have sort of a personal or a life board. And it's a group of, 4 or 5 people. Not, now that I think about it, only one of them is even in my industry. These are just folks that can feed into my life positively, can poke me in the chest and tell me when I'm doing something wrong, and can help guide me with all the experience and wisdom that they've gained over their life. And what that has led to is some really amazing wins. I mean, like I mentioned, we have been able to work with over 50, we'll round down over 50 of the Fortune top 200 companies, which has just been an amazing experience. And in that, for any of your younger listeners, excuse me, what I realized is, and actually, I think Steve Jobs had this quote that all of the amazing things in our life that we use and that enrich our lives, they were created by people like you and me, by normal people, by by people just as smart as us, right? And so when you start to see that, and when we started to work with these big Fortune, top 200 companies, and you get to meet the people running these businesses, ultimately that was one of my big takeaways of, hey, we're small, but we can do this. My guys are just as good, as their guys. And it really starts to build a sense of confidence. But I do think probably our biggest win, and to your point, Glenn, bringing it home to Evid, is just the launch of Evid. My dream since I was a kid was to build my own things. And I think I kind of lost track of that, excuse me, over the years, where, I just was so excited to get a project. I mean, I still remember this day, the first time we had a $5,000 project. And I remember going to my lady, we've been together for 12 years. She's my rock. She's amazing, Ariana, and being like, "Oh my gosh, you won't believe it. We got a $5,000 contract." It's just the most exciting thing in the world. To now, 10 years later, be in a place where we're launching our own platform, and we're in alpha. I think I mentioned to you we're in invite only, but we just had, I think it's our seventh company go through the process. And for them to have to call me up and go, "This has been just the most amazing thing." I usually dread compliance. I dread having to go through this process. And actually, this wasn't bad. This was enjoyable in some ways. And I think they said enjoyable because they know me. Let's be honest. No matter how good we make the product, not many people are going to be doing compliance for fun, right? But to know and start to be validated that we built something that is equitable, that we're not overcharging people for, we're not hiding a bunch of fees, we're not taking your money and then passing you to somewhere else where you have to spend a bunch more money, where we can have folks do everything natively on our platform on Evid, and then keep them in compliance for as long as they stay with us. I think that's probably been one of our biggest wins thus far. And frankly, I would also say, Glenn, that without Evid, I don't think I'd be able to have a conversation with a guy like you. And you and I've only spoke 3 times or something now, but I am so grateful and enjoy the opportunity to connect with people in this industry that are passionate, and that care, and that have a depth of knowledge, that go deep, not just wide. And I feel that I probably wouldn't have many of those opportunities that we've had of late if we hadn't have gotten Evid off the ground. And really, for that, actually, our lead developer, Shantanu Kumar, he's been like a brother for 5 or 6 years. I mean, this was really his brainchild. And I'm just so grateful to that team and to the insight that led us to building Evid, to be in a position where I get to do things like this now. It's yeah, been amazing. But to be clear, we've had a lot of failures, and I personally have had a lot of failures, and I'm sure I'll
Well,
have many more, maybe even some today.
well, I mean, I don't think you have to worry about it. Remember, Edison failed 10,000 times with the light bulb.
Yeah, he
And
found 10,000 ways
I
not to
always,
make a light bulb.
yep,
Yeah.
that's what he said. I found 10,000 ways not to make it. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And
Glenn, I wonder if you remember this. So do you remember, I'm assuming you do, the 90s Bulls with, Pippen, Jordan,
oh yeah,
Rodman, all that. And I remember, I think it must have been the mid 90s. I think it was when Jordan came back to the Bulls after he did the White Sox thing.
yep.
And, he was number 45 instead of 23. And Nike made this most incredible commercial. They actually just made another really amazing one for the Knicks win that I saw the other day, but it was a voiceover of Michael Jordan, and I think it was him walking out into the stadium, and it was about all of the shots he's missed, about all of the failures that he had. Michael Jordan, I think, almost unanimously is looked at as the greatest, if not or rather one of the greatest, if not the greatest basketball player of all time.
He was
And he got
incredible.
cut from his high school team.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
got
He
cut from
got
his
cut
high
from
school
his high
team.
school team.
And if anything, I hope that's especially what younger people take away from this. But I also think, my parents are amazing. They have they've challenged me, and they've challenged me in ways that has enabled me to be able to think for myself, I like to believe. And I'm so grateful for that. But one of the things my dad used to say to us is, you're never too young, you're never too old to follow your dreams and try something, to just try it. I was just reading this story the other day of, I'm forgetting his name, I believe he's a Japanese man that reached the summit of Everest at like 84 years old. I mean, if that guy can do that, these folks, whether they're 18 or 83, that have an idea for a business that they've always dreamed, or a tool or an app that they've always dreamed of making. Right now, we live in an age where you can do that. You don't have to have gone to 8 years of additional education or MBA programs or whatever to get some computer science degree, or go to Stanford to be able to do this. You can do it right now. And my hope is that anyone that sort of comes across my story and our story feels empowered to try and to fail and to try again,
We're
and
we're
just
too.
to believe in themselves.
I think part of the problem today is we're too programmed into um,
Yeah.
our vulnerabilities, and as a result,
Interesting.
there's a TED talk that a lady did, Renee Brown, about being vulnerable,
Brene Brown's
and
awesome.
she's like having a talk with her specialist. I feel this and I feel that. And she's like, yeah. And Renee Brown says, this really sucks. And it was kind of humorous. But the other
Yeah.
thing too is Sir Richard had a TED talk. I can't remember his full name,
Are you talking
but
about Branson?
no, it wouldn't be Branson.
Okay.
Have you ever heard the name Gillian Lynn?
Oh, again, sounds familiar, but I can't place it.
Well, I might remind you shortly. One of the things with Gillian Lynn, she was a hyperactive misfit.
Okay.
ADHD did not become an official disease until 1990, thank God, because I would have not done well on Ritalin. So it was called attention deficiency. Also, I remember is when my father told me what my ailment was, it made sense to me why I struggled in college. I just turned off the math professor when he told me if you take the ninth postulate away from Euclidean geometry, you can prove that a circle has four sides. I'm like, what am I doing with that garbage? So I almost flunked that course.
Glenn, I got to
Um,
be honest with you. I would be terrified if I were a professor and saw you walk into the classroom. I imagine you were then and are now quite the troublemaker in a good
well,
way.
I can be a troublemaker. And
Yeah.
one of the things was with Jillian Lynn, the mom took her to a specialist. This was 1930s. And she's begging and pleading with the specialist. Oh, you got to help me. They're going to kick her out of school.
Mm,
The specialist turns on the radio and says to Jillian, I'm going outside with your mom. We'll be back shortly. I just got a few private things to talk to your mom about. So they go outside, and there's a glass pane that you can see through into the office. And he sees Jillian gleefully dancing. He looks at the mother and says, Mrs. Lynn, look at your daughter gleefully dancing. There's not a damn thing wrong with her. Send her to dancing
amen.
school. And Jillian Lynn, was the choreographer of Cats and Phantom of the Opera. And what I loved when Sir Richard made this statement
Uh,
is, oh, by
okay.
the way, did I tell you Jillian Lynn's a millionaire and her teachers are not? I mean, that
Ha!
really sets the tone
Yeah.
as far as how we try to stifle individuals' creativity. I mean, I will
Yeah.
tell you, some of the best programs I wrote were after I had a six pack of beer. I was
I
uninhibited.
mean, I've been there too, Glenn. So one thought on that I think is yeah, kind of transient, is is that if you take a classroom, and I know this is sort of a left field for you, but if you take a classroom and you take a car from 1950, and then you take a classroom and a car from 2026, the car is incredible. It drives itself. The classroom looks pretty much the exact same. The only difference is we changed the chalkboard for a whiteboard, and we changed the VHS for streaming.
Yep.
But I really feel like that is one of the fundamental issues, primarily in America, I'm speaking about right now, is education hasn't kept up. And that's not to say that our educators and the folks that work in academia aren't, in many cases amazing people that really are, shaping the next generation. But like you, I struggled with a lot of different aspects of school because I was like, but this isn't the thing that interests me. And I get there are fundamental things that we should all learn and understand in some way or another. But I really feel passionate and hope one day to get a chance to be able to feed into this space that we got to rethink our education. We really got to
Mhm.
rethink our education, and we've got to lean into creativity. I think I don't I this may not be Einstein. I forget who it was, but there's this quote that I come back to a lot, and I'm gonna mess it up, but the essence of it is if you asked a goldfish to climb a tree, it would look stupid.
Mhm.
And the I think the meaning behind that is we all have different talents and skills. We're all geniuses in our own way. It's finding, unlocking, and leaning into whatever that individual genius is. And my hope, actually, bringing it all the way back to AI, is that is going to be one of the use cases that AI truly does then revolutionize an industry. I'm hoping education
Great point.
and medicine are really the two that get the biggest sort of payoffs from it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love that I can, spin up Claude Cowork or code on on my Mac, and I can build anything digital that I can dream of. And that's awesome. And I love it. But I hope that we take that same sort of blissful, creative whimsy that is happening right now in the development space, and we apply it to things like medicine and education, and really start to put some effort behind those things, and making sure that we leave this next generation in a better place uh, than we found them.
Yeah. Well, one thing to be add interesting is I have a Toastmaster speech, if you're familiar with Toastmasters, called Right
Yes.
Brain Thinkers. And the
Yeah.
question I raise is, why do I remember all the hyperactive ADHD misfits like Ben Franklin, the Wright brothers, Michael
Yeah.
Jordan, Magic Johnson, but can't remember one self-appointed ADHD expert? I mean, that says something. And they actually have schools today where individuals are uh, basically it's schools specifically designed for ADHD children, and they're just
Really.
absolutely excelling because the people with ADHD have a right brain thinking process, which differs from
Yeah.
where most of us are thinking from the left brain. I mean, I will share that when I was going to a specialist when I
Okay.
was in kindergarten, and basically this is what my father told me when I was 23 years old, and I'm glad he finally told me this, is there's
Sure.
not one darn thing wrong with your son. However, if he's not the least bit interested, sticking a TNT stick up his butt and lighting it off won't motivate him. However, if
Yeah.
he wants something, I would stand clear because he'll knock anybody in any way, including parents, the heck out of his way. So
Yeah.
that allowed me to have a better understanding of me, which allowed me because I had to rethink how I taught myself stuff because I never would have been the show programmer that I am today if I had stayed in the same mode after my father told me what my deficiency was. It's a
Yeah.
deficiency. You have to reprogram it, and
Let,
it paid off huge dividends.
Let me ask you a question really quick on that topic. Like, one, thank you for sharing that. I know it's yeah, I generally think people should be able to share that stuff and it not be an issue. I also, not to sort of be too on the nose, but generally I also think we should be uh society should be a meritocracy in most
Hmm.
cases. I think, we shouldn't try and put people in a box and assume that because X they fit into Y, and et cetera, et cetera. I think generally, we got to stop doing some of that nonsense. But my question to you is, so what do you how do you view then tools like Duolingo, which actually recently just had a big AI update, and Code Academy? How do you look at those as far as these now, now that they have AI in them, these AI tools that are meant to gamify education. How do you look at those? Or how do you
Well,
feel about those, I guess?
I am still in the early stages of giving my assessment.
Okay.
What I will say personally, I do see the value and benefit of AI. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
what I what I get concerned with is people being able to understand certain concepts. Okay,
Okay.
because like when you're doing, for example, I used to have what was called there's a thing called C2 security where you basically look for unauthorized changes. And I built the capability of being able to create tarballs of specific files. And if they changed, I would go ahead and replace them. Okay.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
I'm not so sure AI has the wherewithal to understand the file tree walk capability.
Mm,
And so there's just certain areas where I can see how the code can be built for an accounting system, it can be done for other things. I'm just not so sure when you start getting into the interesting. So I'll give you another good example, regular expressions. I got a
okay.
friend who's heavily into AI and he wants to be able to create agents for um, the what's it for regular expressions to be able to create an expression to do something.
Okay.
On the simplest terms, I am confident it will be more than capable. However,
Okay.
having worked in the FBI, where if you ever seen Java logs,
Mm-hmm.
ugly, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if it
It's
even
like
gets
a data lake as opposed to a database in a way.
yeah, and it gets even uglier when you're trying to pull out strings of data to create a report. And
Yeah.
because of my skills of regular expressions, I was able to anchor the data. At the FBI, we had the Sentinel workspace. That's where they did their investigations, collaborative workspace to do investigations. So I actually had to pull out the data of the turnaround time of case studies that was then
Okay.
presented to the appropriations committee. So you can say you're getting your money's worth out of this product, being able to do the
Sure.
research necessary to do the stuff. And you'll get a kick out of this. You want to know the extent of my FBI orientation?
I can't imagine you didn't cause trouble there too.
No, I didn't, but I
Mhm.
was floored when I was told this. I sat, I came in, sat at my desk. It was two sentences. Do not look at the JFK file and do not look at the Hoover file. That was the extent
Yeah.
of my FBI orientation.
Well, that's a
And
different podcast we'll have to do one of these days, Glenn, where
oh,
we can go through,
we could definitely
we
do a
could go
podcast
down
on
it.
it.
I have done way too much. My older brother is a very capable, intelligent guy, and he, at a very young age, got me very into the whole Camelot, the Kennedys, JFK, and all that stuff. But Glenn, just to, and I know we're running short on time now,
Yeah.
but one thing I just wanted to tie together what you were just saying with what we were talking about earlier and what you asked me earlier about trends, and then we talked a little bit about sort of roadblocks.
Hmm.
And what you said just sort of brought something to mind that I can't believe I haven't mentioned to you in this discussion or one of our previous. You and I am sure, as well as many of the people that are will be listening to this, are familiar with vibe coding, right?
Yeah.
And there are entire applications. For example, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Base 44, which is a vibe coding tool that I think Wix bought for like $80 million. The gentleman who made that, if I'm not mistaken, he vibe coded the vibe code tool that he built, and he did it in like 6 months, and then within 9 months it was sold. And I think what people don't understand right now, again, to dovetail into what you were saying, Glenn, is vibe coding is amazing and it's really good at the front end. It's good at making things pretty. It's typically not secure, and that's where I think these models that I'm sure will come back online, hopefully in the not too distant future, of Fable 5 and me as part of the Mythos family at Anthropic, is meant to really help with those things. I fingers crossed, hope. But I think that is a big gap right now that people don't fully understand, and especially the less technical people that are vibe coding, and they're making some really cool stuff, and they're able to express their creativity in really new and exciting ways. But I think a very real reckoning that's going to happen soon is a realization that, again, you still need a human in the mix, because the security, the privacy aspect of those applications. I mean, you could find an individual with maybe just 2 years of formal education and system architecture that could probably get in and pull all the API keys and user data out of a lot of these vibe coded platforms. So I just sort of tying into what you were saying, I do think that's a sort of big glaring issue coming for us that already exists and people aren't aware of. Um, but when you were talking about some of those security vulnerabilities, it sort of brought that to front of mind.
Yeah, it's very interesting to say the least. To wrap up, there was something that you said to me when we did
Yeah,
our getting together
yeah.
earlier this week. I would like for you to talk and elaborate on this great quote that you gave us. Success is not based on the size of
Oh,
your wallet.
yeah,
It
yeah.
is based on the size of your impact.
Close. You were close. Yeah. So and I will say, my close friend and actually the guy that I originally started Path with, he ended up then going back into commercial investments, specifically real estate. A man named Chris Lemos. He's like Sean. Chris is like a brother to me. He's an amazing guy. And we actually, I think, sort of came up with that together at the same time. So what we say is our success is not going to be defined by the weight of our wallet, but rather by the reach of our impact. And and that's part of why at the very top of this episode, when you mentioned that the little silent E in Path, again, our name is PATHE. And for those of you that want to check us out online, PATHE.us. We are not the French company that has all the archival footage of World War One. That is a different Path, and I think their logo is a rooster. So if you see a rooster, it's not us. Um, but that sort of quote that Chris and I would say is why we decided to put the E in there and to embed our principles, our sort of core values into the business. And again, those three E's are economic, environmental, and empowerment. And what that translates to, and I know it sounds silly for a tech company, but what that translates to as far as the economic piece, and you can see it in EVID, is we don't do any of that BS, silly nonsense, hidden fee. Whenever I get my bill from Xfinity every month, I'm like, where the hell did that fee come from? And it's like
Yeah.
it was and they're ridiculous. It's like it was raining on Wednesday fee. It's like, how the hell is that my fault? We don't do that stuff. And again, with all of anytime we price anything, we want it to be equitable. We don't want a situation where we walk away, patting ourselves on the back, go, we want. No, it should be we can both win. I think generally every individual getting into business should be required to read Stephen Covey's The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. So that's economic. Environmental is we're not out here beating our chests. There's, I'm sure, a lot of things that we could do better, and I know there are a lot of things that I could do better. But generally, this big blue dot floating in this infinite and ever expanding nothingness, to me, is really all we get. Maybe one day Elon and some of these other folks will figure out how to get us to Mars, and we'll terraform it and be great. But right now, all we got is this planet, and it's super freaking cool. And our general belief, my belief, and the belief of our company is that we should try to do our best to take care of it. So while it's probably not the best solution, what we've been doing historically is we pay to offset whatever, we're not going to be 100% correct, but any travel, the power that we use for AI, the power we use for all of our compute, we generally try and calculate that, and then we pay to offset our carbon footprint through a number of different nonprofits that plant trees. Again, maybe it's not the best, but that's all we know, and that's the best we know how to do right now. And then the third piece, empowerment, is that we set aside, it works out to be about 3% of our revenue for organizations that that we have vetted and that we believe are actually doing good work and making a difference, that they're not just sort of filling their coffers, but the money you give them actually goes to do things. And the one of them, there's always three. So we just like we have three E's, we always have three organizations that we're supporting. One of them is real simple. It's Charity Water. As someone who has been blessed enough by no action of my own to have been born in the Western world in the United States, I do feel like I was born into privilege just by being born in America. And we got our problems, but it's a really amazing place to live. And I feel so privileged for being to live there. And the fact that I can drink water out of my sink without having to worry about it blows my mind that other people don't have that. So we give money to Charity Water, and we give money to an organization called Networks, which I mentioned to you before, is in Romania. And they've done such a good job. The Vatican actually now seeks out their input on different holistic community development programs that end and have provably broken the cycles of generational poverty. Because the reality is that, you take one of those kids from this village in Sharia, Romania, where the houses are made out of, mud. Maybe he's the next Einstein. Maybe he's the next Wozniak. Maybe he's the next, I don't know, Steve Jobs. Who knows? But we believe that we should try and empower them with what we've been blessed with so that they might have opportunities too. And the third organization that we work with is actually the first organization. I didn't even realize this until just now, so thank you for that, Glenn. It was the first organization that ever gave PATHe a contract back in the day. And it was the coolest thing ever. Like I said, it was the best. And it's an organization called Three Strands Global Foundation. You can look them up, 3sgf.org, and they are working to fight and end human trafficking. And it was started by a woman named Ashley Bryant, who is one of those mentors that I talked about. The most amazing. She is like, every little girl should go look up Ashley Bryant. She is an amazing example of good leadership and just being a good human. But to bring it full circle, those are how, or rather, those are what those core values actually translate to for PATHe and what we're trying to do. And that all ties back into this belief that our success isn't going to be defined by the weight of our wallet, but by the reach of our impact. And so we're trying to, in the best way we know how right now, we're trying to use the gifts that and the things that we've earned through the work that we've done and the things that we've done for these other companies to try and leave this world hopefully a little bit of a better place than we found it. And for us, that's that impact.
That's great.
Yeah, you can see I get sometimes I get knocked on when I do these kind of things because I feel just as passionate about that as I do the technology that we're working on. And I think those two things can live in parallel.
Yeah, you put on a great show today. Congratulations. I want to also mention to people in the name of Matt Flanagan, I did stick there path.us. That is their website.
Oh, Glenn, thank you, sir.
And I encourage you all to check out their website. And for those of you, especially when Matt talked about the EVID product.
Yeah, EVIDR.
Oh, okay, EVIDR. I would definitely reach out to him and learn about that product and see if it will definitely work for you. Matt, I cannot thank you again for the time that you spent with me. This was a great podcast, listening to your thoughts, and I look forward to us following up on the discovery down the road.
I do too, and I hope that we get a chance to do another one of these in the future. Glenn, I am so grateful for you and your team for reaching out. And for anybody that Glenn and his team reach out to in the future, I promise you, he doesn't do any gotchas, and he really takes the time. Glenn, you really took the time to get to know me and what we were doing before we even had this episode.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that. I appreciate you and what you're doing, and hopefully this will help one person. Hopefully,
Well, I
can.
hope you get a lot of business there, and hopefully, as we do our discovery, there's ways that I can provide some solutions for your company. You have
I
yourself a
love it.
great day. And
You too.
for now, I'm going to stop the recording.